Thanks very much for staying with us. Parts of Gauteng were hit by a fierce storm last night, damaging properties and vehicles in the Tshwane area. There were multiple fire incidents involving shacks, a restaurant and an electricity substation. Trees were uprooted in the Centurion area, with roofs of shacks blown away in Soshanguve. Peter Motolla is the Deputy Chief Fire Officer at the City of Tshwane Metropolitan Municipality. He joins us now for that discussion. A very good evening to you, sir. Thanks for being with us. Mr. Motolla, very good evening to you.
Yes, good evening.
All right, let's start here. So the heavy storm, we understand, caused much of the damage in Tshwane. Let's talk about the extent, of the problems caused.
Yes, from the Tshwane emergency services, we received a couple calls during the storm last night. The first call last night that we received was the rival power stations, and we were told that it was on fire. And we immediately responded to that scene, and when we arrived there, we find that it's actually not a power station, but it was the pyramid substation that was on fire.
Yeah.
And we immediately extinguished that fire. And fortunately, there were no injuries on that scene. And the cause was still not known, but we are still investigating what was the cause of that fire.
Yeah, let's talk about what's happening now. I mean, we hear the fact that, multiple fire incidents were involving shacks, were involved. So obviously, the concern really is around, residential areas, apart from some of the other issues that indeed were caused to some infrastructure.
Yes, we also received a call from a call that was multiple shacks that were on fire, and we responded to that scene. It was at Camel Drift East informal settlement, and we responded to that. And when we arrived there, we find that 95 shacks were already burned down, and 217 people were homeless. And our disaster team responded to that scene to go and help those homeless people.
Yeah.
And at the same time, the other part of the informal settlements, the houses were blown off by that strong wind. And when we arrived there, we find that 16 houses were blown off and left 39 people homeless again.
Yeah. Let's then also talk about, I think you touched on it briefly, the issue of the pyramid substation, which then caught alight. Do you know of any resolutions when it comes to that? We do understand that everything is now in place again. We heard from the MMC for Utilities, Temba Force, who was giving an update on that pyramid substation. But is there anything further you can add in terms of, what happened exactly?
Oh, yes. Also, we had a couple of calls from Pretoria West residents and Soshanguve, where they were complaining that their houses' roof were blown off. And of course, we responded to those scenes, but fortunately enough, also there were very, very minimal damages to those residents' houses. But yet, there were a lot of destructive from that storm.
Yeah, generally when these sort of crises, there are contingency measures in place for if something like this should happen. I'll give you the example, in Asia, where in parts where there are many earthquakes, they make sure that the buildings can indeed be able to withstand should there be any kind of further earthquakes. This was caused by lightning, and one wonders, the fact that we're not immune to having, any more future lightning storms, if there's going to be, something put in place so that we don't see a situation like this again, where we hear, the substations caught alight and people's fires have caught alight, restaurants have caught alight. Is there any thought process in terms of, a way forward?
Yes. most of the time we are communicating with South African weather services, and they give us this warning. But unfortunately, last night we couldn't get that warning. So all what we are saying is we advise the more especially people from the informal settlements that when they erect their shacks, they must please try by all means to make enough spaces in between, because when one shack caught fire, the whole set of shacks are lighted. So if they can give space, that will also minimize this group of shacks that are appearing.
Mr. Motolla, thank you very much for giving us your time here on SABC News. Peter Motolla, Tshwane Deputy Chief Fire Officer there, talking to us, of course, about those fires caused by a heavy storm in and around Tshwane.